Data versus dignity. How do we define and measure poverty in the U.S.?
What is poverty? Where do we even begin? Through our research and discussions and in a simple online search, it is clear many Americans today consider poverty to be material deprivation. While we don't think this definition is wrong, it's certainly not complete. While those living in poverty may have fewer material goods, Robert Rector actually provides statistics that the average American living below the poverty line has many possessions. On a household amenity score that considers 30 items, where every point counts for one amenity, the median amenity score for all households in 2005 was 19. The median household amenity score for poor households with and without children ranged from 14 to 16. These statistics suggest that poor households have less amenities but still have a substantial amount. That does not necessarily mean this family's car is reliable to a drive to a job several miles away from home, but it does reflect the high societal pressure in the U.S. of owning such material goods to feel a sense of belonging and dignity rather than marginalization or humiliation.
So if poverty isn't merely material deprivation, what is poverty?
We would argue that poverty is an inability to maintain certain necessary functions to participate as a member of society with dignity and quality of life due to a lack of resources that restrict various capabilities.
Let's break this down. Basically, we believe that humans have inherent and unalienable dignity. All people have the right to live a life full of certain universal functions. What is a function exactly? According to Amartya, functions represent parts of the state of a person, in particular, the various things that he or she manages to do or be in leading a life. These functions are what one is doing and being. Functions are a point within the greater sphere of one's capabilities. Capabilities are what you can be and do. This can include the opportunity to select and freedom to choose, the ability to be well nourished, have good health, and establish security.
Nussbaum breaks capabilities down for us into combined capabilities and internal capabilities, which emphasizes the relationship between a person's place in society and the opportunities available to them. Combined capabilities are the totality of opportunities you have for choice and action in a specific context by which functions can be achieved. Internal capabilities, then, fall under that umbrella and are more fluid states of being of a person and their skills. Human capabilities are supported through development of one's internal capabilities through education and resources to enhance health, well-being, self-respect, and integration into their respective society, a society that esteems material goods more than ever. Together, internal capability enables combined capabilities dependent on social, political, and economic conditions in which functioning can actually be chosen.
An example of a person with internal capabilities, but lacking combined capabilities, is somebody who was born with high intelligence and work ethic, but may be prevented from continuing on to secondary education because their family cannot afford it and they must stay home to help pay the bills. On the other hand, a person lacking internal capabilities, such as having severe medical needs with physical limitations and mental health challenges, inhibits their opportunity to take advantage of combined capabilities present, like available employment. If someone is unable to be a healthy, capable, confident worker, then he or she cannot realize the totality of opportunities among employment locations, tasks, and responsibilities.
To sum up, poverty is not merely a lack of income or possessions, but rather a deficit of adequate functions or choice over one's functions, something that emanates from being unable to fulfill certain capabilities. The human beings behind a single statistic are born with inherent moral dignity and the right to have access to free choice and opportunity in this world.
So how do we measure poverty in a way that determines who is actually in poverty, and how can we ensure that we uphold their human dignity?
The answer is not simple. We agree on the need for some objective measurement to provide a measure of finances, for capabilities often require resources that must be financially maintained. And alas, we have gotten to man's best friend and worst enemy, money. Whether we like it or not, money does play a crucial role in life. Since money enables resources, and resources enable capabilities, and capabilities enable functions, we must find a measurement that determines a sufficient amount of money each person or family unit needs to be able to provide for basic resources. When basic resources are met, one can shift their efforts away from merely surviving to other endeavors that improve their quality of life.
The current standard for measuring poverty is the OPM, or Official Poverty Measure, which was developed in the early 1960s. There is an economy food plan of which the OPM multiplies by 3 to allow for other expenditures such as shelter and clothing. This threshold of poverty measures different sizes and compositions of family households related to their before-tax cash income to determine whether the family unit falls above or below the set poverty line. The only adjustment that the OPM makes is for inflation. The OPM measurement is outdated and overlooks many important factors. This current poverty threshold does not consider government benefits from programs such as Medicaid or SNAP, geographic differences in the cost of living, rising levels and standards of living, discretionary spending, or that households may have to provide for people who do not have blood or marriage relations.
According to the OPM, two families are not considered to be living in poverty if their annual income is at $15,000. However, while $15,000 is sufficient for a family living in rural Kansas, it may not be sufficient for a family living in New York City. That family living in New York City has a higher cost of living. They also might have 2 foster children they provide for that aren't factored into the poverty measurement. Because of this, the family in New York City might need government benefits but does not qualify because of their income.
A more updated measurement is the SPM, or Standard Poverty Measurement, created by the National Academy of Sciences. The SPM establishes a threshold of poverty by totaling the expenditures of food, clothing, shelter, and utilities of consumer units with exactly 2 children, multiplied by 1.2 for discretionary spending, and sets the mark for poverty at 33%. Some big differences with the SPM measurements compared to the OPM are that this threshold takes into account government benefits, adjusts for geographic location, considers all individuals who live at the same address, adjusts for the change of price of expenditures on the FCSU, and takes out taxes on income in order to determine how much money a household actually has to spend.
We believe that the SPM better measures poverty by considering the nuances of life. The SPM acknowledges that basic necessities extend beyond food, shelter, and clothing. You can survive with those things, but today utilities and discretionary spending also make up a large portion of the bill. The SPM is also a better representation than the OPM because it considers various expenses required to survive in various geographic locations, not just how much income a household has. We would argue, however, that the SPM should measure poverty without government benefits included because we must be able to determine where people stand before aid so we know how to allocate government assistance proportionately. It also does not adjust the prices of food, clothing, shelter, and utilities according to the Consumer Price Index, so in order for this to be our new official measurement, we would want it to be adjusted regularly based upon the CPI.
All in all, the SPM is a line where we can ensure the basic resources of life, according to today's standards, are met so that we have enough resources to turn to capabilities. This is the bare minimum of a line that satisfies the necessities to survive, but we understand that no 2 pictures of poverty are the same.
Who among these pictures is living in poverty? Sometimes it's much harder to tell than just what we see on the outside. There is a wide spectrum to the extremity of poverty, and a one-dimensional line that serves as a cutoff between those living in or not living in poverty excludes the factor of variance. A household severely below the line versus just falling short of an SPM threshold line are not necessarily experiencing poverty in the same way. Therefore, an ideal measurement would build in a measure as a spectrum up to the poverty line. With a line that just meets the basic necessities, we don't consider the theory that philosopher Nussbaum calls tragic choice. When people living with low or inadequate income are forced to decide between their dignity or fundamental well-being. Money itself does not constitute a person's whole story or well-being. However, many people are forced to make unfair sacrifices.
For example, someone might need to maintain a living wage by working multiple jobs with crazy numbers of hours under stressful conditions, and in the process, give up their mental, physical, and emotional health, and critical time for leisure, social interactions, and rest. The inescapable this or that in this situation is unjust. Since the SPM as a financial line does not consider tragic choice, we also need to incorporate a measurement called the Human Development Index. The HDI, according to Nussbaum, is a weighted aggregate of data concerning life expectancy, educational attainment, and GDP per capita. It's used to assess the development of a country, which is ranked based on the basic achievement levels in individual human development. An individual's capabilities is greatly dependent on their available and proximate resources. We consider health and education to be the crux of capabilities necessary for attaining the capacity to live comfortably enough to sufficiently learn, work, and function with agency over oneself. Poverty cannot be measured without considering a community's resources for health and education that the household can utilize. Incorporating the need for proper health and education into the poverty measurement helps to eliminate tragic choice. So while it is beneficial to have some quantitative factor to assist the government in allotting aid, it is extremely difficult for just one number to explain poverty. By using the HDI, we could measure poverty to see whether a person has enough income to turn into capabilities and if their surrounding community could support those capabilities. Thus, we would recommend augmenting the financial benchmark by adding the HDI to the poverty measurement with a few of the following modifications. The SPM will cover a holistic financial measurement, so we do not need the GDP component of HDI. But education and health measurements are important indicators of human experiences behind the monetary front of poverty. Also, the HDI currently only assesses countries as a whole, but we propose to conduct measurements through research at a more local level, such as counties or cities. The conditions of poverty in the U.S. are so diverse that the average U.S. HDI rank would not encapsulate the needs of each geographic location.
We recognize that these measurements will likely be costly and more complicated to attain by evaluating a circumstantial perspective of poverty more frequently and in each individual community. There are still some elements of poverty that will not be completely factored into the measurement, and others that are difficult to measure due to subjectivity, but what is important is that using both quantitative and qualitative measures widens the scope of measuring poverty for what it really is and can help us to draw stronger inferences about one's central capabilities in respect to their income, necessity spending, geography, education, and health. Ultimately, our measurement needs to be expanded if we want to truly address and solve poverty at its core. The costs today will be well worth the end results they'd allow us to achieve.
To conclude, the relationship between income adequacy and capabilities are interrelated. Without money, capabilities are severely limited, and having money does not guarantee a person the ability to achieve if capabilities are not supported by the social, economic, and political conditions. The adequacy of one's economic means cannot be judged independently of their options and possibilities to convert their income into capability to function. Income does not tell the whole story, for needs vary parametrically with personal characteristics and circumstances. As Amartya Sen supports in his book Inequality Examined, poverty can be better seen in terms of capability failure than in terms of failure to meet basic needs. And capabilities demand security. This means not simply just giving people a capability, but ensuring that their external community can support those capabilities. That is why we believe poverty is best measured by augmenting a modified version of the SPM with the HDI.